Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another edition of the BNM podcast. My guest today is Mr. Samuel Elelaboy, who's actually in London, England. What's up, mate? How you doing, Mike?
We're doing very well. We're doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Samuel, for making out time to be on the BNM podcast. I see your hands are full with that cute little one out there. How's it going? Talk about family life. Let's start from there. Our topic today is men empowering men. So maybe some men can actually take a cue of you just sitting down with that little one, taking care of her, taking care of
For
her.
sure, for sure.
Good. Let's talk
So
family. How you doing?
yeah, so just to keep it completely real with yourself, I'm a newly minted dad. She's literally 5 months old. It's a whole interesting story with her. We were in the hospital for like the first 4 months of her life. And it's only now we're like at home and like kind of getting a bit more of a routine kind of going on. And so when you kind of reached out, for me, it's always a juggle, fixing what day, because she's always obviously different plan. Luckily enough, when you had messaged me, which is yesterday, and then today, I was able to just feed her with bottles. And she's asleep. And she's a good baby. So even if I'm talking, she'll rest for like the next 30 minutes to an hour. So we're good for this podcast. In regards to fatherhood and being a husband, and again, just all of that, it's a constantly unraveling chapter in my life right now. I actually took up therapy a couple of weeks ago just to mentally prepare myself as well as I journey through this. Usually it's something that, hopefully you'd have people around you, mentors or, men above you, who kind of give you a bit of insights. And I've been fortunate enough that I've created a community to just kind of assist in that area. But I also realize there's an important need to just have that one-on-one person to just be a vent, be a wall, and aid me in my direction of life. So yeah, excited to be a dad. It's a whole challenge.
I know.
And it's one that I always say to men, it's a blessing from God, and you've got to be ready to take on that mantle because it will demand a lot from you.
It sure does. It puts things in perspective. I completely know that I'm a dad myself. So I've been there. Unfortunately, my kids are all grown up, so but yeah, I completely understand the challenge of where you are right now. But the beauty of it also is very important. But there's something you said that you actually took out therapy to make sure you prepared yourself. Now I haven't heard that in a while, but let's talk about that for a second because I know my friends who are all therapists are like, whoa, I like that one. Tell me, what was the essence of taking out therapy to prepare you for fatherhood?
Yeah, so for me, I'm usually a belts and braces sort of person. So I like to prepare before an incident even kind of takes place. And that's always been my mantra since probably A levels. And for me, I'm quite a resilient person, emotionally, physically, mentally. But I know that there is some chapters in your life which you can never be prepared for. And knowing that when our daughter was in hospital for the last like 4 months, I battled through that. I was able to hold down the finances for our family and things like that. But there's still a part of you that you have to condense, you have to compartmentalize, um, because you're obviously serving your wife, you're serving your daughter, and there's a lot going on. Now that we're through that season, there's obviously things that I know in myself I needed to revisit and just like clear and make sure mentally I'm cognitively capable of what the next chapter may bring. And so therapy was always something I was thinking about. I know it gets talked about a lot nowadays, especially with mental health. The suicide rates for men is like 3 and 4 people are men. I'm a big advocate for the charity that we have in the UK called Movember, which is where we grow our mustaches in a representation for men's health. And I known about therapy. It's been something in my mind. I didn't think I needed it, but having been a father, I know that regardless of whether or not I need it, I need to have it because you shouldn't wait for a crisis to then seek help. And especially in this chapter of my life, it's one of those cases where there's so much I don't know. And there's also a lot of emotions that I've had to go through. Going from a husband, so going from a fiance to a husband to a father in less than 13 months, Like,
Wow. Wow.
and you know, there's God that plays a part in that in helping me through that journey. But even he would say, you know, again, seek wise counsel.
Get some help.
For sure, for sure, for sure. So yeah, and again, it's been terrific. It's been helpful, and you know, even if just to have a space where you can just vent, it's wonderful. So yeah.
I think that's very important, that you can actually have a place where you can vent at every game. And most men don't take these things for granted, and because they can't vent, they internalize everything, and then internalizing it, what happens is that they begin to implode, pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
And by the time he gets to the point where you're seeing it on the outside, the damage has already been done, you know. So I think what you're doing is a very wise step, and I recommend that most men actually, in anything they're doing, you know, take out time to go through some level of therapy, or at least have an avenue or a safe place where they can actually vent. Well done.
100%, 100%. And I would just like to add to that as well. So, you know, I think that the beauty as well in the therapy is, you know, if you're a righteous man, or if you're striving to be a righteous man, you know, you're trying to do things right. It's a very hard and narrow road to walk down.
That's correct.
Sometimes you can almost kind of suppress things in order to keep on that path.
That's correct.
And you know, if you don't have your spiritual walk with Christ, if you don't have your way of filling your bucket back up, it can easily turn into resentment. You know, you can say, oh, you know, my wife's not appreciating this, appreciating that. And even though you're still on your principle as a man, forging away, every time you're doing that and you're not being reciprocated in the same kind of love for whatever reason, it can hold resentment. So that's another reason why it's just good to have that external perspective, so that you can understand things are for a season. You know, the wife is she's pregnant 9 months. Once she's past that, she'll be able to, you know, adjust and take care of herself and the family, but know that it's a season.
I agree. Everything is a season, and in that season, I always advise people not to make a lifetime decision in a temporary situation, right?
Yes.
So just like the stock exchange, it goes up and it comes down. They always tell you, don't sell when it goes down, because eventually it's still going to come up. So
For sure.
well said. Well said. Let's go back to Samuel, the young man. Let's talk about you growing up, because everyone looks at you now and they watch what you're doing on your social media platforms. They think, oh man, he's such a great guy. Life has been so easy. I bet you there's a journey somewhere. And that journey is what we try to get out on the Broken Not Shattered podcast, to show that people might have gone through a level of brokenness, because they're not shattered. They've been able to come back and do what their purpose is, or what their calling is, or found some kind of level of equilibrium where they can actually excel in what they're doing. So let's go back to Samuel, the guy on the streets.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up with really good parents, a nuclear family, went to prep school, then went to back to state school, and then went to University of Surrey. From there, that's probably where I had my biggest transformation. And then in my second year, I realized I was way more interested in business and sales and marketing. And so I actually dropped out. And again, you can imagine, as a Nigerian young person, you know, that didn't sit well to my parents. And so that was probably like a moment where I was shattered, not broken. You know, I really had to dig deep in myself and have that belief in myself, even when I had so many doubters, not just from my parents, but also from my peers around me as well. And at that point in time, entrepreneurship still wasn't like as flamboyant as it is now.
Right.
And so it was very much a big bet on myself. And I was working 2 jobs at that point in time, just to kind of cover my own rent. Again, I was living away from home, and there were many moments where there was like a semi-depression. I haven't really had like a depression per se, but that phase was probably the closest I kind of came to where I just felt alone. When my friends were graduating, I was just at home on a beanbag, because my landlord at that time had decided I'm going to sell the property literally right before Brexit. And I was like, I got another problem to figure out now. So it was a metamorphosis of a stage. And having done that, at that point in time also, I was looking for my church to help me. And at that point in time, my church actually wasn't reaching out as much. And I found my foundation in Christ, and I let on Him, because no one else was around me. I couldn't turn to my parents because they weren't even like on my side for what I was doing. And yeah, forging ahead, putting my stick in the ground, saying that I'm going to make this work. And I did that. And I went into learning sales first. Then I worked into a marketing agency. Then I went back into fintech, then grew into fintech, worked my way to the head of sales. And then just before Jemima was born, just handed in my resignation. And then, yeah, that's where we are right now. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. That's a journey. Jemima just woke up. Do we need to take a minute to
no, we should be good.
Oh, we're good.
It's good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. All right, great. Man, that's a beautiful story. So now you're married. Let's talk about relationships, and then we'll talk about men empowering men and the challenge in that area. So I'm a Christian too, so I always try to reference the Bible. In the book of Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for man to be alone," right? Now, this is God actually saying, hey, a man needs someone next to him. In choosing that, from your perspective, should a man be looking for companionship or compatibility?
It's interesting that you phrase it like that. Should a man be looking for companion or compatibility? Because instantly my mind is thinking, can it be both? But now I'm trying to decipher between the two. What makes the difference of the two? Because I think, from my perspective, you should be looking for companionship. You should be looking for a friend that you can build with. And you should also be looking for compatibility in certain aspects of the relationship. You might not be a complete match. That's for God to work, through the both of you to get to that. And I also like the fact that you said, in my opinion, because I believe it's different for every person.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
And for me, it was what I was initially seeking was the growth mindset in this individual. Can I grow with this person? Are they able to change? Because if I know that, then I know that no matter what hurdles we run into, I know that we have the capacity to evolve and grow. And so I can be patient enough to grow through that. And then outside of that, what I'm looking for is the intangible traits: loving, caring, nurturing, thoughtfulness, things that you can't necessarily train, that sometimes may just be innate with the person. And so when I know that that's then is a bit like like a 80% overlap, then I can trust God to know that we'll get through the hurdles of life.
I like what you said there, because I know that one of the things when you're talking, I was just thinking about myself years ago, in this same space, and I'm like, wow. One of the things that I've learned about relationships, or in most cases marriage, is that it is a growing path. It's for the individual to grow. I don't think it was ever designed for you to look at your spouse or your partner and say, you have to change. It's about you, the individual, start changing yourself. I think the whole idea of bringing two together to become one is that each of you are internalizing your own growth. You got to grow yourself. Like the things that will work for you and Susie might not work with you and Amanda, right? So Ben was a great guy, but a terrible husband, right? So Amanda could be a beautiful daughter, but a lousy wife, right? So it's all those things. But so she has her good side and her not good side. He has a good side, not a good side. You, the individual, is the one that has to say, I have to grow. And that's just my take. I see that's what you're trying to say, that at the end of the day, companionship and compatibility are together. But those intangible things that you just mentioned, they're deal breakers. If they don't have,
they're non-negotiables.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I hope that some man heard what Samuel just said, and will take it on in their own move to make a decision in their relationships. We're going to take a break, Sam, if you don't mind me calling you Sam. And then,
for sure.
And then you just come back, and the break is going to be a few seconds, so don't wake the baby up. Let's take a break and then come back. And welcome back again, Sam. Thanks for making out time from London, England, to actually speak to us on this great Sunday as we actually discuss men empowering men. You've taken on this journey as a young man, and I've seen your work, incredible work.
Thank you.
What got you into this? What made you feel that men really have to be mentored? Young coach, as a youth coach or whatever. What was the drive for you that made you feel that this is something you want to get into?
Yeah, so I think it kind of touches on what you mentioned before. There's always that silver lining, that needle that gets threaded backwards. And for me, I'm the oldest son, and I've got two younger brothers. And during uni, when I had that broken stage, I didn't have any mentors to turn to. I didn't have any older peers to turn to. I had books. I rinsed out as much as I could on Amazon to get secondhand books, paying £3. And they taught me to some degree. I went through about 300 books. But I realized the changing point was when I got my first mentor, when I was about maybe 3 years after uni, and he compressed decades into days and taught me so much. Then I got another mentor, similar thing happened. And it made me realize just how much important it was to gather community. When they talk about your network, is your net worth. And when I realized this, God then also placed it on my heart when I actually saw enacted in real life by Lord Hastings. He has a community called Men of Purpose. 300 men gathered in one room, and similar backgrounds. And in that room, you felt nothing but love. You felt nothing but safety. You didn't have to check your shoulders. If anyone knows what London is like, sometimes you have to check your shoulders, make sure everything is safe. But in this room, you didn't have to. You just felt nothing but love. And growing up, that's probably something I would be looking to see that existed, but you wouldn't find it on TV. And when I experienced that, it just kindled something in my heart for like, nah, this is to go bigger, this is to go wider. Lord Hastings, he has his way of just how he wants to orchestrate the group. He's not interested in making it bigger. He has his way of growing it himself. But I asked for his blessing, and I recreated my own kind of style, where anyone around the world can reach out and they can join the group and be like that. And so, I created a brotherhood where men could come to connect, collaborate, learn, but also have a space to be vulnerable and talk about these certain issues, knowing that you have people who are married, single, divorced, and they can give their different perspective, and that individual can grow from that as well.
Wow. So can men really empower other men? Truly?
So, and this is another thing that I kind of touch upon while in these groups, is I try and educate the men on how they acquire wisdom. Right? Even in the book of Proverbs, there's ways in which you can acquire it. You need to go to a jeweler if you want to learn about watches. You need to go to a mechanic if you want to learn about cars. Right? And so if I'm going to learn about marriage, I want to speak to somebody who maybe has 35 years married, and then understand, okay, what kind of nuggets am I taking with that? If I want to learn about what not to do in the marriage, I might talk to somebody who was divorced and what things they may have learned. Right? And so I always try and encourage the men that, if you're going to be around these men, be discerning about how you go about acquiring information. If you want to learn about business, obviously speak to the man who's already done 6-7 figures in business, so he can give you a template that's proven to work, and so on and so on. So I definitely think men can be powerful. Men, in fact, we're built that way. We're hardwired to be in a pack, learn from one another by doing as well. When we used to go into the war, we'd look each other's side, and just that gave us a greater power and courage to strive forward. If we did it by ourselves, we'd probably turn our heels and go backwards. But if we've got two brothers on either side who we have confidence in, that power gets magnified. So there's definitely a power in being in the pack.
There is a power in the pack. I completely agree on that one. So let's talk about, let's look at Project 50, right? Because from my perspective, and I'm going to go back to about power in the pack. I want to ask you a question about the importance of networking. But let's talk about Project 50. What is that all about, and what are you trying to do with Project 50?
So essentially, Project 50 is about helping men become more disciplined and more purpose-driven. Discipline aspect is solidified in the Project 50, where you do 50 days of 7 disciplines. You wake up at 8 a.m. You have 1 hour, no distractions. You journal, you read, you exercise, you eat clean, and then you have 1 hour dedicated to either developing a new skill or furthering on a skill. So just 7 disciplines. You do that for 50 days, and that after 50 days, you would have sharpened your ability of discipline, of being disciplined. So that's
So
just like the
why is discipline so important, Samuel, for a man?
discipline is heavily important for a man because there is an expectation that's going to be placed on a man to do certain things and to carry out certain things. And if he hasn't acquired discipline, consistency, and knows how to sacrifice here and there, then he will be inept at doing and carrying out these duties. And discipline runs through all areas of our life, whether that's in our fitness, in our relationship. When we get married, our wives have an expectation for us, and we have to uphold that. As much as they might flounder and like go up and down, it's for us to set that standard. We are that rock throughout the entire family. That requires discipline, right? The same when your children look up to you and admire you. What time are you getting up at? What time are you going to the gym? Do you even go to the gym? If we don't have these disciplines in place, that's what they're going to be learning about. That's why it's so critical for us as men to have these discipline, because it's also what gets respected amongst the pack as well. If I can trust a man to carry out a duty and I know he's disciplined, there's a high level of trust there. If he's not disciplined, then he loses value within the pack as well.
No discipline, and then you lose value within the pack. I like that. I like that. Networking. What is the importance of networking, especially for a black man in the UK?
So networking is massively important. One of the things I learned from our late Kevin Samuels, some people love or hate him, is that men should strive to be useful, and useful in terms of utility as well. So not just in their finances and how much they can bring to the table, but also in how, who do they have in their networks? If I'm looking to carry out this particular project, if I speak to Ike and I find out that he actually has a few good lawyers, a few good accountants, he's useful. Like, this is something that I'm interested in networking with Ike. I'm interested in networking because I can increase my capabilities. There's a great message in the book Think and Grow Rich about Henry Ford, and he wasn't the most intelligent person, but he had a row of buttons where you can tap into highly intellectual people. He had a network, right? And from that, he was able to achieve so much because he didn't have to leverage upon his intelligence. No, he could leverage upon the intelligence of others, and I think that's super powerful.
Yeah.
And in the world that we now live in, where there's so much information, we need a conduit for actually accessing the right information and knowing how to also utilize it. So for example, if I want to carry out a business transaction, I might not know all the things, but if I know somebody who's a great lawyer and a great accountant, I'll speak to them, what do I need to do? And then I'll be able to execute through them as an extension. So that's why it's so powerful to really have a network as wide as possible, and to keep fostering them, to keep nurturing them, and be serving towards that network as well.
Wow, that's deep, man. That's very deep, and I hope most men could hear that, because I believe that once we bond together, we can overcome almost everything.
100%.
The problem is that when everybody starts running an individual race, and they feel that they don't need anyone, then that I would never become the man I am today without my team. Definitely, this podcast that we see today, there's a whole team behind us that make it look good. I'm just the face, right? But the guys who are doing the real heavy lifting at the back, and as much as I sometimes am hard on them, I truly appreciate them, because I know one day any of them can easily sit in this space and do a better job than I'm doing. So I completely agree with you. And for my team, kudos. I just wanted to plug it in for them too.
For sure.
All right, guys. They're gonna say, "Oh my God, this guy's a trip." That's okay. So your audience, we know they're men, but what age grade of men do you actually have?
Yeah, so it's typically between the ages of 25 to 45. They may sit within a corporate space. They may be investors, business leaders. That's typically the audience that we have.
Well, is this this Project 50? Is this an ongoing thing, or is it just a gathering of men that come together and then they go their separate ways? every now and then?
Great question. Great question. So the mindset behind it is that this is something that we run every month, every last Saturday of the month, and it will be a continuous thing. And like I said, it's a place where men can come to learn, grow, network, but also have a space to be vulnerable. That last bit is very, very key because again, men don't have safe spaces where they could just, like, if people could go to the barber shop and just sit down and talk amongst other men, they'll probably do that. But hey, the barber has to make his money, so people need to leave his store, right?
Exactly.
So this is a way where men can know routinely, because that's super important. They can come to a place and they can connect with a lot of great caliber men like themselves, and have that space to be vulnerable and open and talk about hard issues. Even just this last weekend, which was the last Saturday of this month, we had that happen. And actually, as a result, one young man who was struggling and going through stuff, another man in the circle was actually able to offer him a job so that he can get out of his financial situation, which was remarkable.
Beautiful.
And if he hadn't shared that, who knows, he might not even realize the opportunity was there right there. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow. That's great. I think it's well needed. It's needed in our community, and it's needed generally amongst men, that the iron will sharpen iron, and that we actually strengthen one another and get us into the line of purpose and destiny. And I think that's well done what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
I mean, people think
thank God.
Of course, yes, definitely. He's the Almighty One. People always think that you have to have a title in the church space or in the religious space for you to actually impact lives. I completely disagree with it. I think I touch more lives with this podcast than I could have done sitting on a Sunday morning preaching a word. But hey, who knows? On an average Sunday, we have about 1,000 people watching this in live. So
amazing.
And then the others come back to listen, and it's global, so just local. I'm in the US and the DMV area, Washington DC area. Here you are in London, and we're actually touching lives and just communicating. Two more things, and we're going to call it a wrap, so you can go do your daddy duties. I'm just admiring you and your daughter. I think it's such a beautiful thing. What role do you think emotional intelligence plays in men empowering men?
It's critical.
Why would you say so?
So the way I see it, when you transition from being a boy to being a king, that's king, over your household, emotional intelligence is highly important, because you don't want to be somebody who presides over something and be the person who thinks, okay, I'm the ruler now, I dictate, No, you have to have emotional intelligence, because there are moments where you're going to need to be empathetic, lean into somebody else's skill, and admit also when you're wrong, for either for your own sanity or for the objective at hand, where you're going to, right? And that's why sometimes in relationships they'll say the man doesn't always have to be right, because it's not about being right. It's about what is right for the family. And so having that emotional intelligence, or having that executive mind, will actually allow you to role play a situation and know, okay, how do I need to act in this? Do I actually need to come in with a harsh tone, or do I need to communicate effectively in a lower tone so that the other person can actually understand the point I'm trying to make here, and we together head towards the destination that we're trying to walk towards? So emotional intelligence is super important. I mean, for me, myself, I've been fortunate that it's something I realized young that I needed to embody. And that's why I'm not very much I'm more of a pacifist. If needed to, yes, of course I'll fight. But I understand that it's so important. You get way more done when you're just very empathetic to the point at hand. When people are fighting, it's never really about each other. It's about how the person probably felt. Right. So when you understand that,
how you perceive it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why emotional intelligence plays such a big role.
So what would be the most important lesson you've learned as a coach and as a dad?
as a coach, the most important lesson is you never know all, and you can always learn. And as a dad, is um, you're never prepared, but just do your best.
And someone just said to me, ask him and as a husband.
As a husband, okay, that's a powerful one. As a husband, be ready to be a servant leader. So serving, but also knowing how to lead. It's a tricky balance, but I'm still learning myself. And like I said, you evolve, right? There'll be certain things where I evolve, and then I realize, okay, and there's actually aspects for her to evolve, and then but again, life's a journey, and I'm not trying to get to the finish line straight away. I know that like,
Exactly.
hey, let's evolve together.
Yeah. Someone very dear to my heart will always say to me that I'm a work in progress, and I've taken on that one. We're all a work in progress. Samuel, as we come to the end of the show, there's something we call the drop-off question that we started at the beginning of this year. I saw it somewhere and I loved it, so I've incorporated it into this thing. So I coined it the drop-off question. So the last guest, who was actually from Australia, didn't know that you were going to come on board from London, asked a question. So we open up the question, then we ask you the question, and then you will ask the question to the next guest, whether he or she, whoever the person is. So I'm going to read this off exactly how they put it, okay? It says, to the next guest, at your lowest moment, what was your thought or thing that influenced you in that particular moment and made you flip the switch and say, I'm going to turn my life around? Was it someone? Was it something? Or was it a divine intervention? What was the exact influence that made you turn things around?
So there have been a few of those moments in my life. I'll probably say that the most key one was the day I realized we were going to have a baby. And then that made me recalibrate, one, my life and the things I want for my life, and two, how I have to have non-negotiables to ensure that my family is safe and protected financially, mentally. And so that's when I started the deeper work on myself, as well as ensuring that I had plans in place. Because now you're not just thinking about yourself, like if it's yourself, if things go wrong, you can just crash out on somebody's sofa. Now you've got a family and responsibility. So that was probably the biggest shift for me. And I'll never forget that day, because like I said, the next day I took out life insurance for my family. Because I realized I had dependents now. And yeah, I started to just get to it, and we're here. Like I said, a lot has happened in the last year. Again, Project 50 was started just a few months after Monisha was born as well. Yeah, we've just been growing. So I've kind of had two babies. This has been interesting. Yeah.
Well done.
It's been good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's what the influence actually started. So what is your question that you want to ask our next guest? Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. I'll probably say, with the changing landscape of AI and the benefits as well as the fear that it brings, how do you see mankind evolving within the next 2 decades? Do you think it will be as rolled out with the standard, media and how AI robots come to take over the world? Or do you think it will be the case where actually there's a harmony between the two, and you kind of just get on with the day as we have been, and there's not really a Armageddon as such? So, yeah.
Okay, so it's an AI question, right? And we're going to put it to them exactly and as brief as we can, so we can get the response. So check us out for the next edition and the next issue, which will be next week. And so whoever comes on, whether he or she, will answer that question. What do they think about AI? Samuel,
Amazing.
you have the last word. What do you want to say? To look in the camera and speak to your people, speak to your audience. Someone is watching, and their life is about to change.
Yeah, so I would say, never give up on yourself. We are living in the most incredible times possible. We have all the resources available to us. Invest in yourself, double down, connect with great people like Ike, and just know that you can always change your life around within a year.
Wow. Thank you, Samuel. Thanks for making out time. Say hi to my peeps in London, and
Will do.
hopefully we'll get to see you. In our famous
Indeed.
3 words, love, peace, and more grace.
Amen.
See you guys same time next week. And please, please, please follow us on all our social media platforms. All right, buddy. Thank you. Cheers.
Take care.